Ladies and gentlemen, you would need a whole lot of Republican senators to convict President Trump in the Senate trial for impeachment. That ain't going to happen. You would need 67 out of 100 senators. You would need 2/3 of the Senate to convict President Trump and officially prevent him and stop him from running in 2024. I hope President Trump runs in 2024, and I just hope that he learns or is aware of, is cognizant of certain missteps. I hope that he runs again, learns from certain missteps, learns lessons from the past 4 years, and becomes even stronger and a much better candidate in 2024. He already has 70, like the latest poll is 70 plus or 80% approval. He had 90% approval prior to this within the Republican Party. He would decimate and crush any Republican on stage if he runs again. They need 2/3 of the Senate to prevent President Trump. I would vote for President Trump again because he's the first president to step foot in North Korea, to begin détente between North and South Korea. He signed an executive order combating anti-Semitism on college campuses, which is running rampant, utilizing the definition of that word from the IHRA. He presided over the Abraham Accords, peace between UAE, Israel, Morocco, Bahrain, Serbia, and Kosovo, peace deal, an economic deal. We had record low unemployment throughout most of his presidency. He opposes corrupt intelligence officials. And most importantly, he wants to bring Americans home. You can look at his latest statement from the White House. He has always opposed counterinsurgency conflicts, quagmires. He has the opposite foreign policy. He's the antithesis of the Lincoln Project, and I'm always going to vote for anybody who's the antithesis of the Lincoln Project. And so, President Trump is a great president. He has to learn from certain missteps. But what took place was not his fault. He should never see the responsibility rests with President Trump. The responsibility to he didn't tell anybody to do anything, but there should never have been the protests on that day. There should never have been. It was like nothing good was going to come from that. So, I mean, President Trump, you would need a 2/3 vote. It would take a 2/3 vote in the Senate to make Trump the first president to be convicted in an impeachment trial. He's not going to be convicted of anything because he wouldn't be convicted in a court of law. So hit subscribe to this channel right now. Get this segment viral. It's very important. And let's get to 200,000 subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below. My Patreon is below in the pinned comment, the description, and also on my website, hagoodman.com. You could read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Roanoke Times, other publications. You could see my debates. Your support, ladies and gentlemen, via Patreon as well is greatly appreciated. But get this segment going. Tell your friends and family. I mean, you can go ahead and send them this segment if they say, well, he can't run again. Well, yes, he can. Now, I don't know if he's going to run again. I want him to. I have no clue what President Trump is thinking. But if President Trump doesn't run against Biden, Biden goes 8 years, unless there's somebody that can galvanize the support or the movement that President Trump has created. Now, when I say that certain missteps he's made, he needs to learn, he needs to understand that you can't poke the hornet's nest all the time. You can't rile up and get Democrats into a frenzy. See, what's taken place the past couple of years, well, I'll get to that in a moment, but Lisa Murkowski and others want President Trump to... She added that blocking Trump from holding federal office again would be one of the most consequential actions we could take. Well, we had record low unemployment. He allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. He signed the First Step Act. We can go ahead. He's been a good president in terms of achievements. He should never have insulted NFL players. I think that's wrong. Because you could simply have your point heard without the extra. He should never have insulted LeBron James. You might say, well, you know what? They deserved it because Trump was. It doesn't matter. Like at a certain point, you have to take your foot off the gas pedal. You have to hold back a little bit. You have to, because the thing is, you cannot. There is a certain level of. There's a certain level of discourse that when he kept pushing the envelope, they then pushed the envelope even further. Like, you have to understand, and I think one of the lessons learned from the past 4 years is that media is not going to judge you on your accomplishments. They're going to judge you only on your words. So you should have played that game. He should have gone on MSNBC and CNN. I know that people are going to watch this. What are you talking about? What are you smoking? You're nuts. He should have taken the message to them, created dialogue. He did that. He was calm, cool, and collected when he was a candidate. And then when he became president, he was just utterly incapable of dealing with petulant journalists. He dealt with petulant journalists, malicious writers, all of these people. He dealt with them just perfectly when he was candidate in 2015 and 2016. But there are things that he has to learn. There are things that have to be addressed, because we cannot have this he's a great president in terms of accomplishments, but now he's given them, President Trump, or I should say perhaps people who listen to message boards that they shouldn't listen to, the most absurd nonsense. He's given them the rope. He's given them the ability to cancel everything and suppress everything and censor everything. He's given them the ability. And now they're running up the score. Remember the Miami Hurricanes of the 90s? It's 50-0 in the beginning of the fourth quarter. They're throwing into the end zone. They're running it in. It's 2 minutes left. They're up 65-0, and they're on the 1 yard line. They're punching it in. You know what I mean? They're not. This is the thing. Democrats think that they're like king of the hill now, top of the heap, that they can't be touched. They think that, they're tightening the vice. They got Trump supporters, the movement that President Trump created, in a submission hold. They're not letting up. Usually you could tap out. They're not letting up. And it's actually going to hurt them. But those people who did what they did, and I condemn what took place, they completely ruined and destroyed. And the main thing is the five loss of life. Those 5 people should be alive today, but you have to understand the unmitigated disaster, the unmitigated catastrophe from a political sense. In terms of life, it was the worst thing that could have ever happened. The loss of life is the main issue. But it was an unmitigated disaster. Unmitigated disaster. This provision means that if Trump is impeached, convicted by the Senate, and removed from office before the end of his term, he is no longer entitled. But there's an article here. The only way that he's barred in USA Today, the only way that he's barred is by Devin Leake. The only way he's barred from running is if he's convicted in the Senate. And that's the only way. He can be impeached again. He have to be convicted. And that's not going to happen. He's not going to lose his ability to run unless he's convicted. According to the Constitution, the U.S. House of Representatives has the sole power to impeach, and the Senate has the sole power to trial impeachments. Since the House of Representatives impeached Trump, it is left to the Senate to convict him with a 2/3 vote. If the Senate votes to convict Trump, it can also decide whether he is eligible to run for office again in subsequent Senate vote. An impeached and a convicted president is ineligible for future office, so the Senate decides so in a majority vote, according to the U.S. Constitution. So they could get the majority if they convict him, but they ain't going to convict him because you would need 2/3. You would need 10, 13, 14 Republicans. something like that. And so you're not going to get all of those. You'll get Mitt Romney, you'll get Ben Sasse, you'll get Lisa Murkowski. I mean, with the Republican Party nowadays, they could make it close. But see, that's the thing. If this is Game of Thrones, ladies and gentlemen, or if this is Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, this has turned out to be a Shakespearean tragedy, because what made President Trump powerful was also his undoing. Any relevant discussion that we can't have anymore for the past couple of months, we can't have anymore because of how things played out. There were supposed to be special counsels. I wanted Julian Assange to be pardoned. He can't do anything now. With the people, what they did, like, this is our house. It's like, oh yeah, it could be, but it's like, yeah, you pay taxes, but I can't go into. You can't go into the governor's mansion. Hey, this is my house, huh? You can't do that. You can't go into the Pentagon. Hey, I own this. I want a cup of coffee. General, give me a cup of coffee. You can't do that. You can't go into the post office or whatever. You can't go in. You pay taxes, yes. I understand the mentality, but it's like it was zero political thought, and it was, by the way, the people who very likely organized it either believed in message boards who wanted to take advantage of Trump's movement for their own purposes. A lot of the people that went in then said, okay, we're going to make a point to the world. Okay, the point was not heard. Nobody heard the point because there was no specific point in doing that. There was no political strategy. And that's what President Trump, I'll vote for him again, but he has to learn. President Trump needed to understand the past year or so that there were factions, there were people who, like subcultures within the dominant Republican, the dominance movement that President Trump created, that started believing things that didn't exist because of message boards, and or there was a yearning for justice because the cards are stacked against supporters of President Trump, and I can get into that. You had Trump going up against corrupt intelligence officials, media, Hollywood. And so that fostered this belief that, wait a second, there has to be a silver lining. There has to be people on our side. There has to be a great outcome. God wouldn't allow this. And there are people susceptible to that. And I told people 2 years ago that the message board, the Q nonsense was dangerous. I said it 2 years ago. And 99.9% of the people who watch this channel don't believe in that nonsense. But it's a message board. It is not reality. It is a message board. You have no idea if Debbie Wasserman Schultz or Pelosi is typing on the other side of the keyboard. But President Trump should realize that and understand that, it is okay to reach across the aisle. He riled up and poked and prodded the Democrats who were out to get him. I understand. Trump said, you know what? F these people. They're out to get me. I'll get them. I'll be a bulldozer. I'll be a sledgehammer. They want to go after me. I'm going after them. I'm a counterpuncher. They want to punch me. I'm gonna do that. But what happened was when he did that, any time Melania or he or his family or tried to do something beautiful and good and try to, evoke some, harmonious emotions via speech or something, it didn't work out because Democrats weren't. It's not that you needed to convince them that Trump cared about them. No, there needed to be some kind of national dialogue. What took place was the sledgehammer, bulldozer, counterpunching approach was good to get into the White House, and perhaps was good in certain respects to go after people like Comey politically. When Trump went after Comey, obviously, when Trump went after, corrupt intelligence officials, I'm not saying he should have been nice to them. But you didn't, if there was the anthem protest, I understand how President Trump felt. He didn't have to go the next level. These are things that he should learn for 2024. Because if it ain't Trump, and if it's not somebody that can galvanize exactly what President Trump has been able to harness, Republicans lose miserably. And Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse, they'll get eaten alive by Biden, who by the exhumed body will go 8 years. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is there were so many accomplishments, but there were so many missteps. So you can look back and see the missteps. People, you got to take the L and look back. You can't just say, well, the Democrats this and that. How are you going to rebound? That's the importance of this. Channel my voice. You need to rebound politically. You got to understand that social media, the Republican Party, corrupt intelligence officials, late night, Hollywood, all of these things are against Trump supporters, even family members and friends, which, by the way, if you have a person in your life that you know that doesn't want to talk to you because of your support for President Trump, because you agree with, you think that the Abraham Accords are great, is a monumental achievement, or that the fact that the first president stepped foot in Russia, you compare his achievements with President Obama destroying Libya, which is an infinitely worse decision than anything Trump did, or infinitely more horrendous repercussion from President Obama's actions than anything that resulted from President Trump's actions. If you say, well, you know what, I just don't want, I voted for President Trump for noble reasons, and whereas maybe I don't like the things that he said or whatever, I still have a right to vote for somebody that I feel is better without the condemnation of others. If you have anybody in your life that says, oh, I can't talk to you, I don't like you because of your support for Trump, it's actually a good thing, very good thing, because Trump has helped you filter out people who are weak-willed, who you shouldn't trust with your life, or things about you that, you shouldn't trust with your emotions or your heart. It's actually a good thing in a way to find out who your friends are. So because if politics is going to end a friendship or a family bond, that friendship and family bond was fractured long before. So Trump is politics. This is politics. Family and friendship should be well above politics. If you have a person who judges you or says, I'm standing up to you, and then they're like, in their mind, they're like, the guy in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, I'm standing up to you. It's like, oh my God, those narcissists. The Democrats love to judge and condemn. But it's like, if you have that type of person in your life, it's probably good you found out who they were before, with President Trump, than, have them, betray you, or, show a lack of friendship or caring in the future. But anyway, give me your thoughts below. I mean, there's just so many emotions and thoughts I'm thinking of and feeling right now. I mean, this has turned into a Shakespearean tragedy. It really has. And what President Trump was able to do in many cases was awesome, wonderful, tremendous accomplishments, but he never got he never got the recognition, because when he became president, they set so many emotional traps for him. They set so many, and President Trump kept pushing the envelope, meaning there was never, the longer his tenure went, the less of a chance of a national dialogue taking place. Democrats don't get me wrong. See, I know people they're not going to watch until 19 minutes. Democrats didn't want a national dialogue. Democrats wanted two opposing camps, and that's it. They wanted the propaganda to define who Trump was. But he played into that. In 2016, he was able to deal with MSNBC, CNN, all of them. Throughout the past 4 years, he had enough of them. And, he would be flustered in interviews, whereas in the same type of interview in 2015, he was like, that's fine. And, there's so many, the advisors that he had, many of whom were not very good, in a lot, it's just not very good. I mean, he should never have, and I said this the second it happened, he should never have abandoned Michael Flynn. He should, you know what? When people give you an ultimatum, don't ever, if someone says, I have a tape of you in a romantic moment, you know what? Go ahead, put it up. Who cares? Then they'll be like, what? Oh. So, don't ever, an ultimatum, like what President Trump, what they did to Trump, his advisors, you know what, like you have to jettison Michael Flynn. And now that, I was going to do a segment on the Lindsey Graham and Trump releasing Russia probe documents, but I know my viewers will be like, no, whatever. They might do the same thing with this segment. But there needed to be a national dialogue, and when President Trump, when he allowed them to let Michael Flynn go, that was the first step to undermining his presidency with a special counsel. If he said no, then they couldn't go after Michael Flynn for doing anything because he didn't do anything. They wanted to the Logan Act. Come on, John Kerry and others, like, far worse. And so they didn't have anything. That would the House of Cards would have just crumbled because he would have found out. Wait a second, you are using a dossier to go after. Wait, so you want to speak to my national security advisor? So, like, when McCabe sent Peter Strzok and others, and another person to speak to Michael Flynn, that would never have happened had he just stuck by Michael Flynn. Or, I should say, wait a second, no. That discussion, if they wanted to say, they would have a very difficult time going after a national security advisor, because then Trump would have said, wait a second, what's going on here? You're trying to frame and set up a cabinet member? I'm an incoming president. This isn't a peaceful transition of power, but he was surrounded by D.C. establishment types. They got Michael Flynn out, then they got two establishment people, 2 or 3 establishment people right after. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel. President Trump can run again. I'll vote for him again, but he needs to learn. He needs to learn, my God almighty, because what took place, he's not legally responsible. He's not legally responsible for Washington. But why have the protests if there wasn't a national dialogue? We needed a dialogue. We needed an exchange of ideas. Now, Democrats have halted, and they even want to halt emotion. They even want to prevent emotions. And they obviously can't, but they're drunk with power now because they have won a tremendous political victory. For many of the reasons I stated in this segment, give me your thoughts below. They can't stop President Trump in 2024, but he needs to learn from certain missteps of the past 4 years.